Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Ricky O'Donnell. I needed to get Ricky's take on the Jimmy Butler trade. I know we talked about it, for 15 minutes or so on Thursday night going into Friday morning post-draft, but Ricky had a strong take on the SB Nation draft show where he basically was just like driven to sadness by Gar Forman and John Paxson's continued reign as Bulls. What do we call them? Like basketball operations leaders, really? Like, I don't know which one is which. Is Gar the GM and Paxson the president? Is that right?
Yeah, I guess like they're the co-decision makers in a sense.
Yeah.
Like I feel like an end of the year press conference this season where like Paxson sort of said that he's the guy, like he has the final say. But really it seems like there's two of them, so you never really know who to blame, like who is the voice that is really prevailing in the decision-making process that is ultimately sabotaging the Bulls and dooming them to both the present and future of just horrible sadness. So it's a little tough, trying to figure out who to blame. So I just blame both of them. That's basically been my go-to lately.
Yeah, and Ricky wrote a great piece today. That was kind of the impetus reminding me that I needed to get Ricky on the show. Awesome piece today, essentially saying, like, fire Gar Pax tomorrow and, like, restart this. The Bulls don't really understand what they have in terms of the Chicago market and everything. So do you want to start there, or do you want to start with the trade? I guess we have to start with the trade first and just kind of get your thoughts on when you initially heard it, what was your reaction? And then as more details leaked out, what was your reaction?
Well, it's like, here's the thing. It's like, I think everyone knew a Jimmy Butler trade, like whether they were going to make it or not make it, that was going to be the dominant storyline around the team until a decision was made, until he either signed a new contract or until he was finally dealt. So I was fine with, trading Jimmy theoretically. Like, I thought that, the fact that Wade was definitely going to opt into that stupid contract they gave him last season, that totally hamstrung the team. So then they were going to basically run back the same thing as last year with Rondo, Wade, Butler, and that was garbage. Like, no one really wanted to see that. So
no,
they would have been lucky to make the playoffs again with that team. So now it's like they deal Butler, but the problem is that they just did not get enough back whatsoever. I mean, it's hard to talk about, what other deals were potentially on the table, but the fact that they had to include the 16th pick in this trade is just literally insane. The fact that they didn't get any future picks back, like at minimum, this trade should have been Bulls keep 16, Bulls get one future unprotected pick, and then you get Dunn and LaVine in the 7th pick. Even that, I would have felt like was not a strong enough return, but at least that would have been like somewhat acceptable. Instead, they get no future picks, and somehow Thibodeau convinced these idiots to give him the 16th pick with it, which is just a Bulls special, dude. They are constantly getting like strong-armed into giving up additional picks in these deals. They should not have to give up additional picks. It happened with Doug McDermott when they basically had to trade 5 picks to acquire him. It happened with the second Doug McDermott trade when they threw in the best player in that trade, Taj Gibson, Doug McDermott, who's a more valuable player than Cameron Payne, and they threw in more second-round picks. Like, they should be getting these additional assets, not trading these additional assets, but they're very poor negotiators. I just don't think Foreman's very bright when it comes to evaluating talent. I don't think he has a lot of conviction in his own ability to evaluate talent. And Paxson cannot handle the stress of the job. I mean, he's literally cracking. He's like, he's legitimately cracking. I've heard stories from other media members that he is just like not totally there, basically, without saying too much. So basically the point is that Paxson tried to quit this job in 2009 after he choked Vinny Del Negro in the locker room following a game where he played Joakim Noah too many minutes.
By the way, the fact that he didn't lose his job there is just remarkable in so many ways.
I was just going to say, he should have been fired then, and then instead he gets a promotion, because that's the Jerry Reinsdorf way. Now, Paxson did do a very good job earlier in his career. The Eddie Curry trade he made with the Knicks was phenomenal. Picking Joakim Noah with the 9th pick in, what year was that, 2007, I think, or 2008? Whatever. That was phenomenal. I think it was 6. That was a phenomenal draft pick, obviously. Noah turned into an anchor. Hiring Thibodeau was a brilliant hire originally. But since then, it has just been all garbage. And I have no faith in those two guys to rebuild this franchise because personally, I already think the rebuild is off to a terrible start following this Jimmy Butler trade. A, you get no future picks. B, you just gave away both a second-round pick for $3.5 million, which is absolutely shameful. They should take that money and give it to the Chicago public school system because those idiots do not deserve this money. You're rebuilding and you're just selling a quality second-round pick to the richest team in the league. I mean, this is literally crazy that they're doing this. And they got no future picks. And then you want to talk about what they got in return. They got 3 one-way players. Chris Dunn, who I liked a lot coming out of Providence. So people who have been reading my work for a while might think I sound like a hypocrite here because I was a big Chris Dunn guy in that draft. Problem is that his ceiling just isn't very high. He was terrible as a rookie. He was one of the worst players in the entire league. He's already 23 years old after spending 4 years in college. He projects as potentially a B+, A- defensive point guard. He's pretty long. I think he has good instincts on the ball.
I'd go higher than that, but yeah.
Yeah, A- A defensive point guard. All right, so that's an elite defensive point guard.
Yeah, I think he can be like an all defense level point guard. I don't think that's an unrealistic high end outcome for Chris Dunn at this stage.
Okay, but then his offense is really going to be a problem. And you look at the rest of the point guards in the league. We're talking about a league where dude, he's not going to be as good as Mike Conley. He's not going to be as good as Kemba Walker. He's not going to be as good as, and those are mid-tier. He's not going to be as good as Eric Bledsoe.
I mean, he's not even going to be as good as Jeremy Lin.
Wow. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying he would be lucky to be the 15th best point guard in the league. 15 to 20, he would be lucky to be that good. So
I mean that offensively though. Jeremy Lin's a really good offensive player. That's the biggest problem here. You just look at what he can provide offensively. I mean, he can at least get out in transition. He can get out on the run. Fred Hoiberg, with the offense that Hoiberg wants to run, I think Dunn would be helped a lot by playing in a very well-spaced offense, and you would hope that, that is what they're going for now. Yeah. But, yeah, it's hard for me to see how he becomes an upper half starting offensive point guard. And it's really hard for me to see how he doesn't even become if he's going to be a starting point guard, it's hard for me to see how he wouldn't be a bottom 5 offensive starting point guard right now.
Well, just the total package, because his defense will be pretty good, but it's he's probably going to be in the 15 to 20 range if he reaches his potential.
Yeah.
As a starter. Okay. And then LaVine, who I've always been a big fan of, they should have drafted him the first time when they drafted Doug McDermott, when they made that dumb trade up. LaVine's pretty good. He really became a great shooter last year. Yep. Craig and I were doing a podcast, and he said that he became an oh shit shooter, where if he's open, everyone goes, oh shit, and he rips it.
Yep.
Obviously a super athletic player, but he's coming off a torn ACL, and it's just insane that this front office is discounting that injury in a sense, because that's what ruined the last great era of Bulls basketball. They've used Derrick Rose's torn ACL, Forman and Paxson, so many times as an excuse for why the previous foundation crumbled. Now you're hoping that a player who heavily relies on his athleticism regains it. I do like LaVine. I hope he can come back from the ACL. But then even LaVine, okay, so he can really shoot it and he can really score it. He's not really a creator for others. He's not going to be a guy who gets a lot of free throws. And he's not going to be a plus on the defensive end. So really he's a shooter and a scorer. I'm kind of counting him as a one-way player in a sense. He's got the quickness to stay in front of guys on defense.
He's atrocious defensively.
But he's bad defensively. That's what I'm saying. So you got a bad offensive point guard.
He might be worse defensively than Chris Dunn is offensively.
Wow. Okay. Well, I didn't need to hear that, but sure.
He's up there for one of the worst defensive starters in the entire NBA for me. Having said that, I'm a little bit higher on his offense than I think what a lot of people are.
He's got a lot of game offensively. I think.
Yeah.
He's quick, and he's got great size, and he's got deep shooting range.
So you can look at this two ways, I think, right? So Zach LaVine this year averaged 19 points a game, 3 assists a game on a 57% true shooting percentage, which was 2.5 to 3 points higher than what the average was in the league. The average was, I think, 55-1 or so. He was at 57-6. So that's good. He has legitimately become a high volume, efficient scorer. That's really, really good. The issue with him, though, is that, and this is where the two ways come in, he got there in part by becoming more aggressive attacking the rim. He was not always super aggressive attacking the rim, and still, even this year at times, was not fantastic at it. But there was an improvement there. There was a marked improvement in what he was doing to get to the rim consistently, and that was a very good sign to me. He was using his athleticism, using his explosiveness and quickness a little bit better, and contrasting that with the three-point shooting ability, which over the last 2 years, I would even argue, has been in that, oh shit, he's open, we fucked up on defense ability, right? He was becoming a more complete offensive player. So you can look at it positively and say, like, you know what? He's shown, even if he's going to be a perimeter offensive player, he has shown the ability now to where he can at least be an effective perimeter offensive player for you. Or you can look at it negatively and say, oh, shit, we just got this guy off a torn ACL. Is he going to continue to make the leap offensively? Whenever he was making the leap offensively by getting to the rim, is he still going to have that ability? Is he going to still have the upside that we're hoping to acquire here? It's kind of a two-edged sword, right? Like, he's a really good player. It's just we don't know exactly what to expect of him now.
Right. It's like, and he's I don't know, man. And then I want to talk about Markkanen a bit, who I did like in a vacuum, but here's my thing with Markkanen. Like, he's an elite shooter for sure. I personally believe that it is going to be very hard to build an elite defensive team with him as a starter in your front court. And if that's the case, it's going to be very hard to build like a title contending team. So theoretically, the Bulls' idea is like, well, we have no path to a championship. We're going to trade Butler. I think they're already hard capping the rebuild with way too many one-way players. Like Markkanen, I love his shooting ability. He's a zero on the glass. He's sort of a zero on defense. And they need to decide if they want to play him at the 4 or the 5 long term. Like short term, he'll pair with Robin Lopez. Theoretically, it sounds good. One can shoot, one sort of a bruiser. However, Robin Lopez couldn't even stay on the floor in the playoffs against a high screen and roll versus the Celtics. Like, that might be one of the slowest front courts in the league in terms of foot speed and quickness during a time when you want a lot of quickness in the front court defensively to hedge screens, to switch. They can't do any of that. They have 2 non-switchable defenders in the front court now. And then long term, is Markkanen a 4 or a 5? It's like, I would try to maybe play Markkanen at the 5 and then surround him by just bulldog defenders at the 4 and the 3. Like, I don't know, Jimmy Butler. If you get like 2 Jimmy Butlers and put them at the 4 and the 3, like that's kind of how they have to start thinking about this thing long term. It's like, you traded Jimmy Butler. He was a stud. He dragged your ass up to competency for the last 2 years. Now you deal him for maybe 50 cents on the dollar. Sorry. Now you deal him for maybe 50 cents on the dollar, and it's like, already the core group you're assembling around him is so flawed that I just can't see that their ceiling is all that much higher.
So yeah, let's kind of talk about Markkanen here. I think he's absolutely a 5. What I will say about his defense is that, yes, he's not going to be a rim protector, which means you have to find an awesome weak side rim protector to kind of help him out, right? Like, you need to find, the guy that would be perfect in this draft next to him would be Jonathan Isaac, right? If you could pair Jonathan Isaac and Lauri Markkanen together, that would actually be really smart, I think. I will say that I think he's a little bit more mobile than what he gets credit for. Like, I think that by center standards, at least, if you put him at the power forward, given how the game is downsizing, that's going to be a disaster. But by center standards, I don't think his foot speed is that bad. I think he's actually going to be okay, dealing with all but like the craziest guards in the pick and roll, right? Like all but the highest level athletes in the pick and roll.
You're talking Markkanen?
See, I think his foot speed is okay. Where I think he gets underrated is because Arizona runs this hyper-conservative defensive scheme, right, under Sean Miller, where they just try and keep everything contained, keep guys outside of the paint, and, force guys into mid-range shots, force guys into threes, right? So I think that, traditional blocks and traditional steals, that are usually used as indicators of the way that you apply your athleticism on the basketball floor, they often underrate Arizona prospects. So you look at Aaron Gordon, right? Like Aaron Gordon, he had like the biggest thing about Aaron Gordon going into his draft year was, like he has all this athleticism and doesn't get blocks and steals. Like, what's the deal with that? Well, yeah. I mean, whenever you run this conservative defensive scheme, you're not going to necessarily rack up those blocks and steals. We see it with Jaylen Brown last year as well at Cal, where Cal had one of the probably 7 or 8 most athletic teams in the country, but decided to not try and force the issue defensively and play aggressively. They played conservatively because Konzo Martin's teams, just don't ever really try and play aggressively defensively. Their goal is to keep everything in front of them, and their goal is to keep everything out of the paint. It's why they finish in the bottom 5 or bottom 20 out of 351 teams every single year in defensive turnover rate, right? So I think there's a little bit of that happening with Markkanen. His feet aren't terrible. They're not going to be like a plus for an offensive center in the NBA, but I don't think they're going to be like this disaster scenario basically either.
But at the same time, it's like you knew Aaron Gordon was a freak athletically. It's like Markkanen, sure. I think that is a generous evaluation of his defense. Perhaps it will be accurate.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Am I really calling him like a plus defender? Like I'm saying he's not going to be a rim protector. He's not a great rebounder, but he's going to be average. He's going to be average at defending the pick and roll for centers. So put all of this together and you still have a below average defensive center. I just think that his foot speed gets a little underrated and he's often counted as like a nothing defender. I don't know that he's going to be a nothing defender.
Do you think he'll be better than Ryan Anderson defensively? He's a little bigger.
Yes, I think he will be better than Ryan Anderson defensively.
So I'm kind of hoping he can be a little bit better Ryan Anderson. If he's a little better on defense, if he can shoot it like that, that's a useful player for sure. The Bulls obviously need shooting. But it's dude, if you're building a title team, these are not 3 pieces that are going to help you win a title in any scenario. So really the most valuable asset they got back in this deal, which is a horrible deal, is the value of their own draft pick because they're going to be so damn awful this year because Jimmy saved their ass on both ends of the court every single night. Okay, so now maybe they're going to be so bad they get the number 1 pick. If they don't get the number 1 pick, they're probably just going to draft some horribly flawed college player because the Bulls cannot evaluate talent correctly.
Well, hey, at least they drafted a one and done this year. I think he was the oldest one and done in the class, but they drafted one.
That's fine. So, I would have preferred. We could debate this a little bit. I would have preferred.
Well, wait, before we get into that, let me just kind of say what I thought the problem was with the trade. Right, the problem is that you only got one extra asset out of this trade, right? Because you essentially did a pick swap, right? You essentially are now trading Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and the difference between 7 and 16 for Jimmy Butler. You're only getting one extra player out of this deal. Whenever you're trading, some people have the idea of wanting to get the highest potential talent in one singular asset whenever you're trading a star. Others want a variety of lottery tickets, right? The Bulls didn't get either of those things in this deal. They got flawed pieces that can be potentially solid contributors, and they got no singular talent, in my opinion, that is going to lead them to the promised land, quote unquote, right? So that's where my issue comes in. My issue is they didn't take either of the realistically solid approaches to dealing a star and really just kind of went in the middle and fucked up.
They are so far away from this. I can't even see how this team thinks that they're supposed to be winning a championship after this trade. That is just a ridiculous piece of analysis on this trade.
So, you mentioned the idea of not getting future picks. It's crazy to me that they did not get future picks in this deal. It's absolutely insane to me. So, whenever I saw this deal, I thought, oh, yeah, that's what I figure Paul George will get. Right? I figure that Paul George will get something similar to, a solid starter, a projectable but projecty point guard, or projectable but projecty, former lottery pick or former whatever, like an Emmanuel Mudiay, like a Chris Dunn, and they'll get a pick, right? I don't know how good the pick will be, but they'll get a pick. The problem with that is that you kind of said it right there, and I, interrupted you real quick. Right. Paul George has 1 year left on his deal. Jimmy Butler has 2. You're literally getting twice as much value for Jimmy Butler as you do for Paul George It is maddening to me that this is what the takeaway of this trade was. And I honestly feel like I am higher on this trade for the Bulls than what 90% of analysts are, because I like Chris Dunn, because I like Zach LaVine. It is still an absolutely atrocious trade to me.
Yeah, you know what? If you look at all my previous coverage, I like Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine too. I've been riding for LaVine since he was at UCLA backing up Bryce Alford. I have liked Chris Dunn since he decided to go back that 1 year at Providence. I want the Bulls to take him the year they took Bobby Portis in the draft, originally, before Dunn decided to go back to school. And I like Markkanen's game in a vacuum. Like, I think he's an interesting player who could be like really good for a good team.
Right. I think the two of us are higher on all three of these assets than what 90% of people are.
And I still ripped the shit out of him today.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like I have no faith in the front office building a good team, and they've already put themselves at a disadvantage before this thing even starts.
Yeah. No, it makes no sense. You wanted to talk about Markkanen and the pick, right? And you kind of want to debate about that. So let's get there.
Quickly, like, all right, so, you get Dunn and LaVine back. I would still almost rather take a shot at Dennis Smith or LaVine, even though, Dunn plays one of his positions. LaVine and Monk are very similar. Than Markkanen, just because they're way better athletes. What if LaVine doesn't come back super strong, then you have Monk waiting in the wings. Maybe you make Monk a point guard. You have a little 3-guard rotation. Maybe you take Dennis Smith. I don't know. It's like, I do like Markkanen's game. They did need shooting for sure. It is cool. He's 7 feet tall. I could see him being pretty damn good, to be honest, offensively. But it's just like, in terms of really winning a championship, I don't even know why we're thinking about winning a championship, but they must be if they're trading Jimmy Butler, If they wanted to just have a good-ass team, they could have just kept Jimmy Butler and tried to toy around with some stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
So I probably, if I was them, given what they have on this roster right now, because I am a pretty firm believer in drafting for fit, right? I would probably not have taken Dennis Smith because they have now, let me kind of run down the list here. They have Rajon Rondo, Chris Dunn, Michael Carter-Williams, Jaren Grant, and Cameron Payne, all at point guard, none of whom I would say are in the top 75% of NBA point guards in shooting, right? Like, that's probably a fair assessment.
Yeah, true.
So I probably don't take Dennis Smith there. Malik Monk, I would very strongly consider. Ntilikina, probably would not take him just due to the point guard situation. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is just on a lower tier than these guys. Zach Collins, probably on a lower tier than these guys. So it would have come down to Monk and Lauri Markkanen for me. I probably would have taken Malik Monk just because, okay, I just want like a bucket getter, and I get that like Lauri Markkanen is, in many ways a similarly flawed offense first prospect to Malik Monk. But I think it's easier to build a good defense around Malik Monk than it is to build a good defense around Lauri Markkanen, because the center position is a lot more valuable than the shooting guard position defensively.
We're totally on the same page.
So, yeah, no, I don't even know that this is a debate. Like, I would have just taken Monk and been happy. I'm trying to think of, the other angle here is that something you wrote about in your piece here. And it kind of reverts back to them selling the 38th overall pick for $3.5 million. So the trade, they essentially have now sold Luol Deng for Paul Zipser and $3.5 million. Or maybe like $4 million or something. Whatever it came down to. After, I think that the other second round pick was Sir Dominic Pointer, right? And they sold that to the Cavs. Yeah, that's a really bad look for a dude that, spread like blood, sweat, and tears and, shed blood, sweat, and tears for your organization over the course of, 9 years for Luol Deng, 8-9 years, who played probably the third most minutes in your entire organization's history, who, was everything, that you could have asked for from an organizational perspective. You come away with Paul Zipser and $4 million or so. That is your return for Luol Deng. That's embarrassing. That is an absolute joke.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
It's just everything that the Bulls have done over these last, I don't even know that. I would say that during the Rose Noah era, there was like a sense that we're trying to compete and we're willing to spend a little bit. But other than that, in the post-Michael Jordan era, this team has been run like a small market organization when in Chicago, it should be anything but a small market organization.
Absolutely, and I think that all goes back to the lack of accountability at the top. It goes back to ownership. It goes back to the fact that these people are making decisions with no consequences, and, in the end, just winning isn't that big of a priority to this franchise.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true. Let's move on to NBA awards here. What interests you more, this NBA award show with Drake hosting or LaVar Ball on Pro Wrestling tonight?
So LaVar Ball definitely seems more interesting. I did not see it. I was playing basketball myself. So I didn't see it, but the clips I have seen look absolutely phenomenal of LaVar Ball. LaVar Ball is basically a WWE character who somehow became the father of an elite NBA prospect. So this is
everything about it is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is an incredible turn for LaVar Ball. I feel like people were down on him, and tonight on the internet it seemed like people got real high on him. They were real happy about him again. That's fantastic news, I think.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the NBA awards, though. This show I could not care less about. I have to tell you this right now. What does interest me are things like Robert Covington finishing fourth in NBA Defensive Player of the Year. That is fantastic to me. Didn't make any, other teams, didn't make the 2 all defense teams. I think he was like 6th or 7th among forwards in voting, but there are 2 voters out there who love Robert Covington. Like the voting was so concentrated among Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, and Kawhi Leonard. Draymond Green obviously is the winner here. It looks like, even like Kawhi got 92 votes out of 100, and Dre got 100 votes, or like 97 votes, and all of these guys, like I think Rudy Gobert got like 99 votes. So everything was so concentrated that we have Robert Covington finishing 4th in Defensive Player of the Year, and that is, I think, all making up for Joel Embiid and Dario Saric losing out in the Rookie of the Year to Malcolm Brogdon.
I mean, Embiid should have been the Rookie of the Year. I personally don't like awards. I'm not a big awards guy. I just think awards are stupid. I guess I just don't care much. But, Embiid was... I feel like he should have been the Rookie of the Year, right? Even though he put 31 games. Where do you stand on that? You like awards than I do. You've probably thought about this more than I have.
I've definitely thought about it a lot. I did an entire awards podcast, Dieter Kurtenbach. I believe that Embiid probably should have been Rookie of the Year. I care a lot more about, for rookies at least, I care a lot more about high-level excellence than about, full season sustained, solidness like what Brogdon provided. I do think that stuff matters. Like the fact that he could hold down a starting spot on an NBA playoff team as a rookie is ridiculously impressive. The same goes for Rodney Magruder, who I think was the most egregious, person to not be on the NBA all-rookie team this year. The fact that he was out there guarding opposing teams' best players every night for Miami, who finished 41-41 and was chasing the playoffs up until the last game of the year. That's really impressive to me, and I would have liked to see him get rewarded on the All-NBA rookie team. But we're going to look back at this year. I essentially look at awards as ways to look retrospectively at the year that just occurred. And I like Malcolm Brogdon. I think I'm higher on Malcolm Brogdon than what, almost anyone. I wrote about Malcolm Brogdon at CBS when he was a sophomore going into his junior year, said he was going to be a top 10 player in college basketball. I have been high on Malcolm Brogdon for years. He is elite of the elite in terms of, intangibles, and in terms of being a great dude, and in terms of being, a really good role player on the basketball floor. I don't think anyone is going to remember this year as Malcolm Brogdon's rookie year. Everyone is going to remember it as the year Joel Embiid came in and showed off his full potential for the rest of the NBA world to see.
Totally agree, man. Joel Embiid was one of just the best things about the NBA this season. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the funniest athletes, ever. He might be the funniest athlete
I've ever come across.
He's legitimately hilarious. I think that, especially for someone like him who didn't grow up in this country, he probably learned about American culture and stuff like through the internet. He is a master at the internet. His tweets are much funnier than like yours, mine, anyone's really that we know. He's just better at this than all of us making basketball jokes on the internet.
He's incredibly self-aware. Like he knows who he is. He understands that he is Joel Embiid, and he can make hilarious jokes through the fact that he is Joel Embiid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. He has a bit of self-awareness to him that is just so impressive for a contemporary athlete. And yeah, dude, this was the year of Embiid. It's like, here's the other thing, too. I'm sort of a Warriors defeatist. We talked about this on the previous podcast. Like, I don't think anyone's ever going to beat them. I guess we'll see if Cleveland gets Paul George and Melo. I don't know. I would still take Golden State easy in that series, but we'll see. Who knows? But it's like, if the Warriors are just going to win every single year, like, basketball is still going to be something that people love to follow, even if the end result of the season does seem a bit preordained. We need characters like Joel Embiid to keep things interesting. So I think that is pretty much his greatest value, is that, like, this guy's performance and his personality were just both so compelling throughout the entire campaign that he was truly, like, one of the best parts about this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, ultimately, I would have voted him Rookie of the Year. To me, I care a lot more about guys who are dominant, and he was genuinely dominant on the basketball floor. Like, even looking beyond, the off the floor stuff that makes him so likable and so interesting as a future player to watch in this league. He was just, he averaged like 20. What was it, like 29 and 3 or something? While he was on the floor, the Sixers had the best defense in the entire NBA because he's a stud. Like, he's unbelievable. He is a potential generational basketball player in this NBA. Like, if you would tell me he was healthy for the rest of his career, how many players would you take over him right now?
Here's a good one. I love that because his defensive impact was immediate.
So
incredible, dude. For someone who's barely even played the sport, he played 2 years of high school ball, 1 year of college ball, then played 31 games, is a pro over 3 years. His defensive impact immediately so far beyond any young player I can ever remember. It's because he's so smart on the court, very high basketball IQ, and obviously elite physical traits. So here's my question with Embiid. Would you take him over Towns or Anthony Davis, both, neither, or one of them, if I could promise you he's healthy?
If you could promise me he was healthy.
That's what we're talking about with him.
Yeah.
He's talent.
I would take him. I would not take him over Towns. I think I might take him over Anthony Davis.
He's way better defensively than Towns is. Towns is by far the worst defensive big
player of the three, yeah. Definitely.
And defense is most important as you go up in the position scale. It's more important in the front court. So it's like,
yeah,
I think Towns will still be good on defense, but legitimately Embiid is such a game changer on defense already. I am honest to God tempted to take him over both Towns and Davis. This sounds crazy. But
if you could guarantee health.
Yeah.
Like that's the key. Like, we're not saying that like we would take him over either of these guys just because, Joel Embiid being healthy is just not a realistic scenario at this stage, it seems like, right? Like, I don't know that we can expect it. We have to, hope that it continues to happen, and we have to, genuinely just, I don't pray, like I'm not religious in any capacity, but, we have to just like, be here and wish that Joel Embiid will have the best career he can possibly have with health. You might be right. I really might take him over Towns if he was totally healthy. The age difference is a big thing to me. Like the fact that Towns, I think, is 3 years younger than he is.
Is he?
Yeah, because Joel is 23. I believe Towns is 20, right?
Okay.
It's something like that. I'm trying to think, like, would I like, would you take him over Giannis? Giannis is a good one. I probably would not, but I think it's close.
Great question. I don't know. It's like Embiid's a way better outside shooter. I don't know. Now, I'd probably take Giannis.
So yeah,
very tough question.
My rule is always take the elite wing over take the elite big in today's NBA. So yeah, like that's kind of my thought on that.
But like, with the elite wing, you sort of want the shooting ability. Giannis might be a non-shooter.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. You might be right. He really, if he is a shooter though, he's like one of the 10 best players ever. Like,
I love that. Great take.
Am I exaggerating that? Like, if
I love it.
If Giannis becomes a 40% 3-point shooter, he is one of the 10 best players ever.
Dude, I just called Durant the third best player ever on your podcast last time I was here, and Giannis would bring a lot of those same attributes that Durant does, only more athletic. You know, like Durant, the one thing Durant has on him is just he has a significant advantage jumper-wise.
Yeah, but like even Giannis is on his level in terms of, you know, handling ball, creating shots. He might even get to the rim like in the half court a little bit better. Maybe not in transition. He's not quite as shifty as Durant is, like with his hips and stuff. But
we also just Euro step from half court.
Yeah, like when you're that long, it really helps.
Yeah.
Let's move on to other awards. Do you care at all about Coach of the Year with Mike D'Antoni winning? Do you think this should be Greg Popovich's award every year?
Again, I don't care, but I mean, D'Antoni really, like, people are forgetting just how trash the Rockets were coming into this season. I think D'Antoni deserves just a ton of credit for their turnaround. It just really seems like Morey and D'Antoni were totally on the same page in terms of both the offseason signings of Ryan Anderson and Eric Gordon, and just, you know, the philosophy of how they were going to run the team. The personnel really fit the system. D'Antoni deserves a ton of credit. And, you know, being an old school D'Antoni fan, dating back to, I was in high school for the 04 Suns, right? Like, that was like one of the most fun teams ever, the 05 Suns as well. It's great to see the vindication of Mike D'Antoni after, you know, lackluster stops in Los Angeles and New York. So I'm totally on board with D'Antoni winning. I do think he should grow back the mustache. That would be my one closing take.
Yeah, fully agree there. Ultimately, the D'Antoni mustache is more important than who wins this award. You know, they're both great coaches. I'm glad that D'Antoni is recognized. I think that, you know, too often Greg Popovich does get undersold by awards, at least, as opposed to just the general respect he has around the NBA. But I'm sure that he doesn't give a shit about that, right? Like, I don't know that he would care at all.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Popovich, I think he's beyond awards, too. So I don't think Popovich is losing any sleep over this. But just in terms of, like you said, like a nice narrative tie-in, which sometimes award seasons are good for, what you will remember the season by. Yeah, I mean, D'Antoni winning is pretty cool. I guess, like, how many games did the Spurs win this year, though? They won 60+, right? Like, 61?
So my reasoning, I believe I gave this award to Greg Popovich whenever I did awards voting, which was 2 months ago, by the way, because the NBA has decided to put this award show 2 months after, you know, the MVP finished his season. I believe that I said Greg Popovich because he led a Spurs team that started like Pau Gasol and David Lee and, you know, LaMarcus Aldridge in the front court to 61 wins and the number one overall defense in the entire NBA. That is bananas to me. That's unbelievable that he was capable of pulling that off to me.
Yeah.
So unbelievable. No, I'd have gone with that. Defensive player of the year, who would you think is the best defensive player of the year?
I don't even know who won, so maybe you could tell me, but I would say it would come down to Kawhi and Draymond again, with Rudy Gobert probably being the sleeper there. I probably would give it to Kawhi, but Draymond hasn't won one. That shouldn't really factor in, but Draymond certainly deserves it. I have a really high opinion of Draymond in terms of his on-court impact. I don't know who I would go with, Kawhi or Draymond. I guess I'm going to go Kawhi again, though.
So I guess that my thing is, again, I look at this as like awards as retrospectives, and I think it's really difficult to argue that Draymond Green should not have won a Defensive Player of the Year. Like, if we look back on this era of the NBA over the course of the last 4 years and the next 3 years or something. And we look back and Draymond Green hasn't won a Defensive Player of the Year. How weird do you think that would look? That would look super weird to me, right?
So it's like, Duncan. Like Duncan never won one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like it would look super weird to me to look back and see like Draymond Green has not won a Defensive Player of the Year award. And this is a great opportunity to do it, I think. Obviously these awards are voted on before the playoffs are gone and everything and they're done. I said that I would vote for Draymond Green whenever this thing was, whenever I did the awards podcast. But, Dre to me he impacts so many different ways within the modern construct of basketball. He's an elite rim protector as well as a player who can switch out and guard on the perimeter. If that's not more indicative of the way the NBA is going than any other player in the league, I don't know what is, right? And, the fact that he is so elite at it, I really value that he's elite at both aspects. I mean, when I say that, I really value the fact that he can do that. And I really do think that right now he is the best defensive player in the NBA. You can make an argument that Rudy's rim protection is a little bit more valuable. I would probably disagree, but I would at least understand where that argument is coming from. Ultimately, though, for me, it's Draymond Green.
Yeah, you just convinced me, man. That was a compelling argument. He just absolutely deserves to win one. There's no doubt about it. So, I'm just saying that I'm a Warriors defeatist, that they're going to win every year. It's over. But, dude, if they lost Draymond to injury, to anything else, that would make them really vulnerable. Because even with Durant and Curry and Thompson, I would still think they're vulnerable if they had to play a final series without Draymond. He's that important to them, even with all the other stars.
Yeah, no, absolutely. MVP was Russell Westbrook. I said that, again, I'm going to look back on this year as being Russell Westbrook's year. I don't know that he's the best player in the NBA necessarily. I still think that's very clearly LeBron James. I don't know that I would rather start a team with him than Kawhi Leonard. Again, I really value production, two-way, elite level play out of wings. But again, I'm going to look back at this being the regular season of Russell Westbrook, right? Like I am going to look back at all of the insanity that he did and all of the just ridiculousness that was him dragging this substandard Thunder team to the playoffs by averaging a triple-double. That stuff is important to me, I guess. Like I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to it has to be the best player every single year to win the award. I'm okay with giving it to the guy that, to me, put up the elite year that is most memorable.
Westbrook was the greatest show on earth, man. I agree with you 100%. He was the gift that kept on giving every single night. I think so often a casual sports fan will watch sports and think, you know what, if I had that guy's talent, I would be more productive. Obviously, that's a stupid thing for the casual sports fan to think. But with Westbrook, you can never think that. The guy plays harder than any athlete I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
I remember when I was growing up, I would read Bill Simmons articles when he would talk about, maybe this guy could average a triple-double. I feel like he would, have a... guess on that a little bit in his preseason columns or whatever. I remember reading that back in the day. Even LeBron would be like, "There's no way anyone's going to average a triple double. That's just too impossible. That will never happen in my lifetime. That someone will average a triple double." Well, we just saw it, and it was done in such convincing fashion that I think Westbrook could do it again next year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Ricky? Do you care to get into the Kevin Love, three-way trade rumors with Cleveland and, Indiana and Denver?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, that would definitely make next season a lot more compelling if Paul George was to go to the Cavs. I personally would love to see that just because that really would be a stiffer challenge for Golden State. I just don't really know, what's Denver's incentive to really do that? Denver's going to be giving up what in this trade exactly? Are they giving up Gary Harris?
If I was them, I would not give up Gary Harris in a trade like this. I am also driving the bus of Gary Harris awesomeness. I think he's fantastic. Having said that, if they could put together a package of Hernan Gomez, Emmanuel Mudiay, Malik Beasley, and a first, do you think that's better than Julius Randle and a couple of first-round picks from the Lakers?
Yeah, I'd do that. I mean, Malik Beasley could be pretty good. Hernan Gomez could be pretty good. I would just do that, whatever. But then it's Jokic and Love would be so phenomenal offensively, but so bad defensively.
I am intensely interested in that, to see how they could somehow piece together a defense around those two in the front court. And then also, probably have to keep Mason Plumlee, given the fact that they gave up Nurkic and a first rounder for him.
Just going back over that trade, dude, if they could legitimately get Mudiay, Beasley, Hernan Gomez, and first, I'm doing that in a heartbeat if I'm the Pacers. Because they're going to lose them anyway.
Would you rather have that package, or would you rather have what the Bulls got for Jimmy Butler?
I don't know. I might take what the Bulls got, to be honest.
I would too. I was just checking.
Yeah. It's those guys are more projections, Malik Beasley, who knows? But I would take the chance on him. And Mudiay has been bad so far. Mudiay and Dunn are probably similarly bad so far. I would take Mudiay over Dunn probably. What do you think about that? Would you take?
I would probably take Mudiay. I've always been super high on Mudiay, though. I had him at number 3 in that draft class.
Yeah, I liked Mudiay's game too, but they have similar strengths and weaknesses. I would say Dunn's way quicker.
Yeah, that was a thing that I overrated about Mudiay. I feel like he is not as good an athlete as I thought.
It's tough to gauge quickness. Especially with Mudiay, he didn't even play college basketball, so.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Sean Hyken just tweeted out, Chicago Bulls general manager Gar Forman received 1 first-place vote for Executive of the Year.
I'm going to RT that right now. Yeah, Hyken.
Your thoughts, Ricky O'Donnell?
I think that Gar Forman is really bad at his job. I don't dislike him personally, but I do think that he has no ability, no conviction in his own ability to evaluate talent. I don't think he has a good eye for the game. And mostly, I don't think he deserves his job. I mean, he was brought into the organization 25 years ago, 20 years ago, with Tim Floyd, basically. So if I was Gar Forman, the first thing I would do is fire myself because I don't deserve the job. It's all cronyism, man.
I cannot stop laughing at this. It is unbelievable to me that, Jeff Bauer, why did Detroit's general manager get an award vote for Executive of the Year?
Wow, I don't know. Maybe someone was really impressed with KCP's mild development this season. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's an odd one. I'm sorry, Ricky. That sidetracked me, and I felt like I had to share that information with you.
I really appreciated that. So that was a quick RT of Sean Hyken live on the air, live retweet. How many times can you get that on a podcast?
Far too few. So Chris Herring's now for the investigation, who gave Gar first place vote. Let's talk about that Denver deal. The Denver side of it is interesting because, they would probably make the playoffs next year if they make that deal. They would have Kevin Love, they would have Jokic, they would have Gary Harris, they would hopefully be getting a leap from Jamal Murray, and they would still have enough other pieces. You'd still have Wilson Chandler if you decide not to trade him. You would still have
Gallo at that point.
I'm sorry?
Do they keep Gallo at that point?
Probably not, just because, good Lord, how bad can your defense get?
Right.
From the Pacers side, I get it. From the Cavs side, I would imagine they would have to give up something. I don't know what we're talking about them giving up yet, but, or I guess they'd be giving up Kevin Love, but is that going to be enough? Is Kevin Love enough for them to give up Paul George? Would they have to give up something else to get this deal done?
And future picks for the Cavs is kind of a scary proposition because if they lose LeBron,
we're at that point where it's actually pretty scary for them, right? Do they? No, they don't still have all their future picks. Like Portland owns a 2019 Cavs pick, I believe, right?
It's not unprotected though, right?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I think I have this like saved somewhere. Talk amongst yourselves, Ricky. What else do you got for me?
No, I just really want to know who voted for Gar Forman for this Executive of the Year. Like,
we're gonna find that out tomorrow,
dude. Can you please at me when it happens, Sam? Because I'm trying to like not live my whole day on Twitter. I want to like write stuff. I want to do better things with my day than look at Twitter all day. It's just not a great use of your time.
Yeah.
But I would love to know that piece of information. So if you could at me when that comes out, I would seriously love to know because, I mean, my thoughts on Gar Forman, those are on the public record at this point. I would say that I've been probably pretty harsh, but I'm just trying to tell the truth,
Yeah.
I just try to tell the truth.
The 2019 Cavs pick is owed to Atlanta so that what happened was they ended up switching, that crazy David Griffin trade where he found a way to get Kyle Korver and had to switch picks from 2018 to 2019 with Portland, right?
Yeah.
Or 2018 to 2017 with Portland, I'm sorry. So yeah, it's top 10 protected 2019 and 2020. So yeah, it's actually pretty okay, it looks like. They're not going to get totally screwed. That's their only first rounder that's like out there right now.
Right.
So 2021 is out there, and it's for the taking, Indiana, if you want it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, man.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be terrifying if I was a Cavs fan. Ricky, do you have anything else you want to chat about before we get off air here?
No, I'm good. I think we covered quite a bit. I would love to, if you want to go in on LaVar Ball on WWE a little bit. I didn't see it, but if you have any interest in this.
I have no real hot takes on LaVar Ball on WWE. I have not seen the whole clip yet or anything, but all of this is totally absurd and all of this is ridiculous. And the fact that WWE built around Lonzo Ball or LaVar Ball an entire segment of its show is just so fascinating to me, right? They had big baller brand mannequins up on that stage. That is crazy to me. That is absolutely insane that they are essentially getting free advertising from WWE.
LaVar Ball, marketing genius, man. What else can you say? The fact that Big Baller Brand is rolling off people's tongues. We both knew who LaVar Ball was before Lonzo came into UCLA. We both knew that he had a big, colorful personality. Not in a million years did I expect LaVar Ball to be this big of a public figure.
No.
You know what I mean? Go back to the first time you heard about LaVar Ball. You're like, oh, this guy, he's very outspoken. He's pretty funny. Now he's taking his shirt off on WWE, hawking mannequins with Big Baller Brand sweatshirts. He's probably selling for $400 each. I mean, what a life.
Shout out LaVar Ball, man.
Shout out.
Yeah, I wish I could get LaVar Ball on this podcast. Maybe I'll try at some point. Ricky, tell the people where they can find your work before we get out of here.
You can find my work at sbnation.com, the college basketball page, the NBA page. Also, every once in a blue moon, I'll write on bloggable.com. I did that today, so if you want to read my latest on the Jimmy Butler trade, you can find my take on bloggable.com.
Ricky is fantastic. You should all go follow him on Twitter at SBN_Ricky. One of my favorites just because he, like me, really enjoys covering all three levels of really the basketball world in high school, college, and the NBA, and he does it all exceedingly well. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. We'll be back hopefully on Wednesday. We're going to try and still get 3 episodes in this week, maybe a little bit of an off-season preview, going into free agency and kind of talking about some of the stuff that I find interesting and hopefully one of my guests find interesting. So, keep it locked here. We're powered by CLNS Media, and until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.